I was seated in my usual clinic, surrounded by a thick crowd of patients. Calmly, I was examining them one by one, giving injections and prescribing medications, even if someone only had slightly high or low blood pressure. I wrote them expensive tests and charged large sums. The medicines I prescribed didn't truly cure them. They eased symptoms temporarily, ensuring the illness lingered just enough for them to return. Deep down, I knew it was wrong. But what was I supposed to do? I had dreams to fulfill. People told me to get a medical degree. Doctors live in luxury and roll in money. I actually became a doctor. But when it came to getting a job, I found out the truth. Spending millions for a degree was easier than finding employment. After relentless struggle, I opened my own clinic, and that too came with a mountain of hardships. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. But now that I had a clinic of my own, I felt entitled to reclaim every penny I had spent, and then some. With that mindset, I began trapping patients with carefully chosen words. I would earn their trust, make them believe I was the only one who could heal them. They started relying on me blindly. No one felt reassured unless I was treating them. As I leaned over a file for no reason, my assistant walked in and said, "Sir, there's a patient waiting. Should I let her in?" I looked at the stack of 1,500 rupee notes beside me. I had earned nearly 30,000 rupees already today. With indifference, I replied, "Yes, send her in." While pretending to review the file, I saw her enter. I froze. She wasn't like any other patient. As soon as I saw her, I forgot I was a doctor. My eyes widened. She was stunning, not more than 18, average height, flawless skin like milk, large expressive eyes. She didn't look real. She looked like she belonged in a palace. She walked toward me with another girl who was likely her sister. The other one had her face covered. They sat in the chair opposite me, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. Something inside me shuddered. My blood surged with a strange intensity. With a soft, nervous voice, she said, "Doctor, there's a problem. Can you help me?" Her tone made it clear. This might be her first time leaving the house alone, or perhaps her first visit to a clinic. I laced my fingers and leaned forward, smiling gently. "Yes, miss. How can I help you?" She lowered her eyes and turned to the other girl, whispering, "You tell him." But the other pushed her arm lightly and said, "It's your problem. You explain." She sighed deeply and finally looked up at me. Her cheeks flushed as she began to speak. Her face turned a deeper shade of red, visibly battling shyness, but she finally found the courage to speak. Her voice trembled. "Doctor, actually, something has come out," she said. I blinked, confused by her choice of words. She slowly extended her hand and pointed toward a particular part of her chest. "Here, I feel sharp pain. Sometimes it's so intense I scream." She spoke with the innocence of someone completely unaware of how her words could be misinterpreted. Her fingers gently rested over her chest and I froze. The way she said it, her complete lack of awareness, made it impossible for me to look away. She added hesitantly, "Our household is very strict. I'm the daughter of the village mayor. Every time I tried to tell my father about the pain, he would just say, call the midwife or Rafiq's wife. She'll give you a herbal remedy." She lowered her eyes. "I've eaten all kinds of things they gave me, but the pain only got worse. My friend said it might be breast cancer. That's why I came here. Secretly." Tears began to fill her eyes, falling down her cheeks like rain. She was scared, vulnerable, and visibly overwhelmed. I instinctively reached for a handkerchief and offered it to her. "Please don't cry," I said, trying to sound gentle and concerned. "You're safe here. I'll examine you and find out what's going on. Just relax, okay?" She sniffled and nodded. I pointed toward a small private examination room behind me. "We can go in there. It's more private and comfortable." Her face turned crimson. She looked at her companion for reassurance. Both girls stood up, but I immediately intervened. "No," I said firmly. "Only the patient may enter. It's standard procedure." She looked at me pleadingly. "Please let my sister come. I feel scared going alone." But I shook my head, maintaining a professional front. "It will be all right. Trust me." With hesitant, shy steps, she walked into the room. I followed after, grabbing a few medical tools. She was already seated in the chair, fidgeting with her fingers. Please lie down on the bed, I instructed softly. She didn't move. It's okay, I said gently. Take off your abaya and set it aside. I'm a doctor. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Her hands trembled slightly as she removed her outer garment and lay down. I stood there, paralyzed for a moment. She was lying right in front of me, and for the first time in my career, I was completely unprofessional in my thoughts. Her pale skin, her innocence, it all shook me. I approached her slowly, aware of my heart pounding. Her eyes were closed tight in embarrassment. As I touched her gently to examine the area she mentioned, I could feel myself shaking. But not from duty, from temptation. I tried to convince myself I was just checking for signs of infection or lumps, but the truth was far darker. My fingers brushed against her skin, trembling not from age or exhaustion, but from a storm inside me I could barely control. She lay quietly, her eyes sealed shut, her breathing shallow with shyness. I told myself it was just a routine check, that I needed to ensure there were no lumps, no tumors, nothing cancerous. But in truth, I had already sensed there was nothing wrong. Yet I continued touching, feeling, lingering longer than necessary. My heartbeat accelerated, my mind spun wildly between reality and desire. Still, I had to say something. I backed off and cleared my throat. There's no sign of any tumor, I said gently. Nothing life-threatening. It's likely just a mild internal fever causing pressure and discomfort. She opened her eyes slowly and looked up at me, confused but hopeful. I'll give you medicine that'll relieve the symptoms, I added. But you'll need to come back every 2 days so I can monitor your condition. She sat up, hastily wrapping herself in her abaya. Today, I came with great difficulty, she said. Actually, my friend and I go to a house in the neighborhood to learn embroidery. That's the only excuse I had. If my family ever finds out I came to your clinic, they'll kill me. She said it so plainly, yet the weight of those words was heavy. Her father, Bitz, the mayor of the village, was known for his temper and strict rules. She wasn't exaggerating. I gave her a small packet of pills and said in a calm voice, "You'll feel better after these. I promise. Just don't be afraid. I'm here for you." She took the medicine, thanked me politely, and stood up to leave. But as she turned away, something inside me refused to let go. I watched the sway of her walk, every movement of her slim figure embedded in my memory. As soon as she left, I sat down slowly and closed my eyes. The scene replayed itself in my mind, her voice, her touch, the way her cheeks flushed. A strange, intoxicating ecstasy surged through me. I told myself this was more than attraction. "This girl belongs to me," I whispered under my breath. "No one else. She'll be my wife." I was 22. She was 18. Perfectly acceptable by social norms, I was a doctor, running a clinic, earning decent money. If I married the mayor's daughter, my reputation would skyrocket. That thought alone inflated my ego. I waited impatiently for 2 days, then just as I had hoped, she returned. But this time, she was alone. She walked in quickly and sat down in front of me. "Doctor," she said, breathing fast, "please give me the medicine quickly. My father's at home today. If I'm late, he'll suspect something." Her hair was neatly tucked in, her clothes clean and modest. Her face had no flaws, only a raw, quiet beauty. She began explaining new symptoms. Swelling, tenderness, her eyes wide with fear. I looked at her again, and I told her gently, "Come, let me examine you once more." Her hesitation was less this time. She followed me into the examination room with a trusting look in her eyes. I guided her to the bed and told her to lie down. Her movements were still shy, but not as uncertain as before. The innocence was still there, but now it was laced with an emerging trust. Trust I didn't deserve. As she lay down, I began examining her again, pretending to check for changes in her chest area. She closed her eyes again, embarrassed. But I was not thinking like a doctor anymore. I was staring at her pale skin, her delicate body, with a gaze full of desire I could barely suppress. With each touch, my heartbeat raced. My hands trembled again. I wasn't trying to find symptoms anymore. I was I was feeding my obsession under the mask of professionalism. Still, I maintained my voice as calm and kind. There's nothing serious, I said, but I will give you another pill. It'll relax your nerves and ease the pain. She sat up, her expression a mix of worry and relief. Will it leave a permanent mark? She asked. Will I return to normal? You will, I assured her, handing her the pill. Take this and then go home. I don't want your father to get upset. Come back again in 2 days. I'll monitor you closely. She smiled just faintly. You're a wonderful doctor. I've never met anyone like you. Her words made me feel powerful. Inside, I was ecstatic. My plan was working. She was starting to trust me, rely on me, and that meant she was getting closer to me, emotionally and physically. She left again, and I watched her go, unable to take my eyes off her slim waist and graceful walk. As soon as the door closed, I sat back and smiled to myself. I closed my eyes and imagined her again. My chest swelled with pride and satisfaction. That night, I decided that the next time she came, I would ask for her hand in marriage. Why not? I had a steady income, my own clinic. I was respected in the area. If the mayor's daughter became my wife, my social status would reach new heights. 2 days passed. She returned. This time there was something different. She looked happier. Maybe it was the makeup she wore. Subtle, barely noticeable, but carefully applied. She had put effort into her appearance. Was it for me? Did she feel what I felt? She sat in front of me and said, My stomach hurts. The lump in my chest is smaller now, but the pain in my stomach is terrible. I looked at her and smiled. Since your health keeps changing, you need a doctor like me all the time. Then I leaned forward. What do you think about being a permanent part of my life? She blinked, startled. Then I said it clearly, confidently. Why don't you marry me? For a brief second, she sat there stunned, her wide eyes blinking in disbelief. I thought she might blush, might smile shyly, might even nod. But instead, her expression hardened. She pushed back from the chair, stood up suddenly, and slammed both palms on my desk. The loud thud startled me. You should know your place, she snapped, her voice sharp as a blade. Who do you think you are? I stared at her, frozen. You're just a doctor, she continued, her tone full of scorn. A man with a tiny clinic who thinks he can marry the daughter of the number one? Her words hit like slaps. She stepped closer, towering over me with a kind of fire I had never imagined she possessed. Have you even looked in the mirror? She spat. Do you think someone like me would ever consider someone like you? Her voice dripped with contempt. I am a beautiful, respectable girl. No man dares speak to me like this. And you, of all people, proposed to me. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted my tie, trying to stay composed. She wasn't the fragile, timid girl I had believed she was. She was powerful, defiant, and now dangerous to my pride. She grabbed me by the collar. Don't even dream of it, she said through gritted teeth. Go find a girl who belongs to your level. Then she shoved me lightly and stepped back, glaring. Inside, my ego shattered. I felt small, humiliated, worthless. The same girl I had fantasized about had just torn my confidence apart in seconds. I had misread everything. Her smiles, her shyness, her words, all of it. As she stood in front of me with pride in her stance, my thoughts darkened. Anger rose inside me like wildfire. But I clenched my fists and kept my voice steady. I'm sorry, I muttered. Please forgive me. I crossed a line. I shouldn't have said what I did. She didn't reply. She just raised an eyebrow, turned around, and walked back to the chair. Trying to regain control, I said calmly, Let me proceed with your treatment. But something had changed in me. The girl I had once seen as a delicate flower now seemed arrogant, too proud, too bold. My admiration twisted into resentment. My heart boiled with rejection, and I tried to mask it behind a doctor's professionalism. I reached for a vial and a syringe. I'll give you an injection now, Hetsete, I said coldly. This will make you feel better, and you won't need to come here again. She rolled up her sleeve without a word, throat clearing quietly, face unreadable. Afterward, she placed the money on my desk, not with gratitude, but with cold defiance, and walked out. Her eyes told me she had no intention of ever returning, but as I watched her leave, something inside me whispered cruelly, that wasn't the end. I remained seated, fuming in silence. My fingers drummed the edge of the desk as I stared at the money she had left behind. A payment that felt more like an insult than a fee. Her rejection replayed in my head like a cursed chant. Find someone on your level. Look at your appearance. You think you can marry me? I clenched my jaw. My pride was shattered. I, who had seen hundreds of patients bow before my advice, had just been belittled by a teenage girl. I tried to calm myself, but the insult gnawed at my self-worth. I wanted her to pay, not with violence, but with humiliation, something that would make her understand who she had rejected. 10 days passed. Then changes began to surface. Whispers spread through the streets. People began noticing her. Have you seen Khaltoum lately? Someone would whisper. She's different now, filled out, her face, her body, it's all changing. The transformation was rapid and noticeable. Her once thin frame began filling in. Her clothes clung differently. She started hiding herself more, avoiding gazes. Her confident walk was replaced with hurried steps. Confusion clouded her face whenever someone complimented or commented on her looks. But I watched in silence, satisfied. I said to myself, this is what she gets. She humiliated me. I gave her something to remember me by. I had waited for this. I imagined her walking back into my clinic, her eyes full of regret, her voice shaky as she asked for help. In my fantasies, I would smirk and refuse her. I would say, now you know your place. In reality, I continued treating patients as usual. Some of them returned, complaining that their illnesses weren't going away. The medicine helps for a few days, they'd say, but then the pain comes back. I'd nod wisely and respond, your condition is deep. It'll take time. Of course, it was all calculated. I was still manipulating, still profiting. And then, she returned. Khaltoum. She burst through the clinic doors panting, her face pale and drenched in sweat. Her body language screamed fear. But I had lost all traces of the man I once was. I didn't see a patient. I didn't see a human. I saw opportunity. I saw power. My mind spiraled into filth. I forgot the oath I once took, forgot the dignity of the profession. My eyes roamed shamelessly over her figure as she stood trembling before me. I approached her slowly, not as a healer, but as a predator. Lie down, I said, trying to mask my tone. When she hesitated, I grabbed her gently, forcing her toward the bed. She didn't scream, not yet, but just as I was about to cross a line I could never undo, the door slammed open. The clinic door burst open with a bang, echoing off the walls like a gunshot. I froze in place, my hands mid-motion, my heart suddenly pounding for all the wrong reasons. Standing in the doorway was the last person I wanted to see, her father, the village mayor. His reputation for being cold, strict, and terrifying was no exaggeration. He was known to trust no one, especially when it came to his daughter. He had let her come alone, but now his instincts had clearly brought him here. Perhaps to make sure no one took advantage of her. And there he stood, staring at a scene that needed no explanation. I, the man he had trusted, stood dangerously close to his daughter, who looked frightened and disoriented. Her scarf had slipped from her head, her sleeves slightly wrinkled, her eyes wide in panic. It was more than enough. She didn't hesitate. She ran toward him and clutched his chest. "Baba!" she cried. "This doctor is not a good man. He tried to... He's bad." The words tore through me like knives. I stepped back, trying to collect myself, trying to salvage whatever shred of defense I could offer. "Sir, please, this is a misunderstanding," I began, my voice trembling. "She's been coming here regularly, and today's checkup." But his eyes, sharp as steel, saw everything. They saw past my lies, past my excuses, into the truth. And then, without warning, he lunged at me. The first punch struck my cheekbone, sending me reeling against the wall. The second hit my stomach. I staggered, trying to protect myself, but the man was unrelenting. Driven by the fury of a father who had been betrayed in the worst possible way. I begged him to stop, but he didn't. Eventually, the assistant intervened, calling the police in a panic. When the officers arrived, I tried to present myself as calm, professional, falsely accused. I repeated the same lines, claiming the girl misunderstood the situation, that I had only tried to help her, that it wasn't what it looked like. But her father's testimony, the state she was in, and the obvious evidence surrounding us said otherwise. The police didn't listen to my words, only to my actions. They arrested me on the spot. That night, my clinic was sealed. The next day, my medical license was revoked. All my certifications were suspended. I was dragged into court, publicly shamed, and paraded through my own neighborhood like a criminal. And rightfully so. In the courtroom, her father stood beside her. She kept her head held high, her voice steady as she told the judge what had happened. I was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with hard labor. I had thought I was untouchable, clever, manipulative, in control, but the truth was I was nothing but a disgrace. And the fall had only just begun. The iron doors slammed shut behind me, and that sound became the anthem of my downfall. Prison was not just a cage. It was a mirror. Every day behind bars forced me to confront what I had done, not just to her, but to every patient I had ever manipulated, every life I had exploited. In my arrogance, I had believed I was above consequence, that I could play with people's fears, illnesses, even their innocence, and still walk away untouched. But now, in that cold gray cell, stripped of my title, my coat, and my pride, I was just another man among the damned. The news of my arrest had spread like wildfire through the village. At first, some were shocked, and a few even doubted it. After all, I had once been the trusted face of healing in the area. But when the truth emerged in full, when the testimonies surfaced and the girl's courage shone through, the silence broke. People took to the streets. Anger surged like a wave through the neighborhood. They demanded justice. "This man is not a doctor," they shouted. "He's a predator, a traitor to his profession." Placards were raised. My name was cursed. My signboard was torn down and burned. I watched it all unfold from the confines of my prison. I heard that her father, the same man who had once beaten me to the ground, now walked with his head high. His daughter, once sheltered and shy, had become a symbol of strength. Instead of letting my crime define her, she stood against it. She didn't hide. She didn't cower. She had faced me down and she had won. She had reclaimed her dignity. As for me, I wasn't just imprisoned physically. I was imprisoned mentally, emotionally, and morally. My cellmates looked at me with a mix of disgust and mockery. No one respected a man who had betrayed something as sacred as trust. I began to recall every moment, from the first day I lied to a patient to the time I gave her that injection, to the second I crossed that invisible line between doctor and deviant. If only I had stopped myself. If only I had remembered why I chose this profession in the first place. But it was too late for if only. At night, I would lie awake on a stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, haunted by her face. Not the beauty I once lusted after, but the fear in her eyes, the trembling voice, the strength she summoned when she stood up against me. That image burned into my conscience. It was no longer desire. It was shame. And the worst part? No punishment the world gave me could ever match the punishment of living every day with the knowledge of who I had become. Prison days were long, the nights even longer. Time didn't move. It dragged. Each hour was a reflection, each minute a confrontation with the ghost of my choices. Inmates came and went, but I remained. I, the man who once sat proudly in a chair, writing prescriptions, pretending to heal, now scrubbed floors and hauled water buckets in silence. No one cared I used to be a doctor. Here, titles meant nothing. Reputation was dirt, and I was lower than dirt. What haunted me wasn't the punishment, it was the betrayal. I had betrayed not just a patient, but the sacred duty entrusted to me when I wore that white coat. Healing hands had turned manipulative. Words meant to comfort were used to deceive. Eyes meant to observe signs of sickness had become tools of perversion. Each night, when the lights dimmed and silence swallowed the halls, I would see her again. Not the vision of beauty I once lusted after, but the terrified, betrayed girl who had shouted for her father. Her voice echoed in my ears. "This doctor is not a good man." I'd flinch at the memory. My hands would tremble under the thin prison blanket, remembering how steady they were when they shouldn't have been. I thought about her sitting beside her father in that courtroom, her eyes burning with strength, not shame. She had spoken with dignity. She didn't cry, she didn't ask for pity, she told the truth, and the truth crushed me. Word eventually reached me that her story had become more than a local scandal. Schools, homes, and even clinics were now telling her tale as a lesson. Her father, once feared for his rigidity, was now respected for standing beside his daughter, not silencing her. He had protected her honor not by hiding the truth, but by exposing the crime. And she? She had returned to her quiet life. But everyone now looked at her not as a victim, but as a brave soul who did not surrender. Meanwhile, I became the cautionary tale. Mothers warned their daughters, "Be careful, even doctors can deceive." Fathers told their sons, "Honor isn't in titles, it's in actions." And other doctors. They looked at my story with a mixture of rage and shame, knowing one man's crime had cast a shadow over an entire profession. I had not just ruined myself, I had polluted something noble. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I had simply treated her with integrity, given her proper medicine, offered real care, and respected her fears. Would I still have my clinic, my career, my soul? But those questions had no answers now, only echoes in a cell. I often sat on the cold floor of my cell back against the wall, watching the faint beam of sunlight creep across the bars each morning. That sliver of light mocked me. Once I was the one people came to for healing, guidance, answers. Now I sat in filth, stripped of respect, left with only memories that refused to die. No visitors came, not my relatives, not old colleagues, not even the assistant who used to bring patients into my clinic. I had become a name people spat on, an example spoken of and discussed at street corners. But still, I remembered every detail. Her voice, her tears, her scream, and then her strength. That was the part I hadn't anticipated. I had believed her to be meek, fragile, scared. But in reality, she was stronger than I could ever be. She didn't let shame silence her. She didn't let power crush her. She stood against it, but stood against me. In prison, I met others who had done terrible things. Thieves, killers, liars, but few of them regretted it. I did. Not because I got caught, but because I had destroyed something pure inside myself. I betrayed not just a patient. I betrayed the very meaning of being a doctor. My sentencing had brought me here, 5 years with hard labor. But my real sentence was waking up every day with the knowledge of what I had become. One afternoon, I was called into the warden's office. They handed me a pen and a blank paper. "Write your appeal." "Appeal," he said, "if you want to reduce your sentence." I stared at the paper for a long time, but I couldn't write it. What would I say? That I was sorry? That I deserved another chance? No. Because I wasn't the victim here. She was. A girl who came in fear and left in pieces. I folded the paper and handed it back, blank. "No appeal?" the officer asked. I shook my head. "I don't deserve one." He said nothing, just marked my refusal and sent me back. That night, I lay awake again, haunted as always. But for the first time, I whispered a prayer. Not for my freedom, but for her peace. For her healing, for her future. Because even if the world forgot her pain, I wouldn't. I couldn't. In the end, my story was never about love or rejection. It was about betrayal. Mine. A betrayal of trust, of power, of purpose. And that's a weight no prison bars could lift. So, I sit here still, The doctor who lost every thing, the man who could have saved lives but instead broke one. And no matter how many years pass, I'll never reclaim what I threw away in a single moment of desire and ego, because trust, once broken, doesn't heal with time. It scars forever. Why it's